All right, so
Now I'm gonna move really close to you. That's fine.
see, this is why we don't have good intros. So today I'm here again with Lion Cure. He forgot his headphones. So,
I got my headphones on.
oh, there's just too little.
Yeah, no, I got. There's plenty of my shirt.
Today we're going to be talking about a lot of things. We're going to be talking about internal cueing, external cueing, perhaps the fallacy that you need compound lifts, a lot of stuff. And so there's recently been this idea on the internet of kind of the importance of the mind-muscle connection. And one of our buddies, Lexner, is all into this right now. And I think both of us would agree that this would be called like an internal cueing. So like thinking about muscles working. So,
Yep.
and you generally wouldn't want to do this when you're lifting heavy weight. So when you're doing a compound movement with heavy weight, what we're after is probably unconscious competence, aka you don't have to think. We give you an external cue like push the floor or throw it through the roof or something like that, so that you just increase
Get the weight up.
Get the weight up, which is what they said in the get the weight. I don't know how you externally cue a barbell curl, but they figured out a way.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
Pretty poorly. And so I think this is my thought process, is that when you change things to an internal locus of control or an internal cue, you're generally going to focus on muscles activating. You're going to focus on the pump. You're probably going to do that better in your upper body than your lower body, just because you're used to training and seeing those muscles, those mirror muscles. Probably going to do it better with your chest and your biceps than you are with your back muscles. I mean, how many people?
You may.
Yeah, how many people other than you can find their lats?
I can find them for them.
That's true.
Find my own and everyone else's.
You taught me. I got a decent lat spread now. I'm up to like, what am I, 23 inches wide?
It's the most useless special power ever.
My wife's really pumped about about how wide my back is. I did a lot of mid to lower traps today, just because I can't train my upper traps because there's these rules that I have on my hypertrophy.
It's not like compromise.
It's, it's the little things. And so when we get into this, I think this is my hypothesis. When we do this internal cueing, when we're thinking about this mind-muscle connection, I hypothesize that we turn most everything into like BFR, because you're doing high reps, kind of shitty BFR, because you're gonna maybe it's not bad. I don't think it's bad, but I think that if we can get people to a point where they don't have to think, because we know that the driving force of muscle hypertrophy is muscle tension, and then if we can get them to a point where they just execute the exercise and they don't have to think, that's probably better. But how do you? I know that you take people and you kind of coach them through this process. You want them to find and feel certain things in the beginning and then come back to that unconscious competence and at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a spectrum of usage for anything, right? I think in the beginning, probably a lot of internal cueing is going to be helpful for most exercises. Maybe not big exercises like squats and deadlifts and things, but I could even make that argument, and I have made that argument and helped other people to get over pain syndromes and things of that nature, or technique errors by doing that. But I think that there is a time and a place for all of it. So yeah, like you said, you're probably going to, like, one thing that we can almost guarantee by adding an internal cue is that they're probably not going to move as much weight, right? Is that what kind of where you were getting at with that, with the reducing mechanical tension and kind of doing like BFR in a sense?
Yeah, I think we see that with anyone who kind of changes that from an external, like, I'm going to push as much weight as possible, and they move to this, I want to find and feel things. They inevitably drop weight significantly. And that may not be a bad thing if you're still going to that point of momentary failure. But I think if you're not taking, that might work for like a bicep curl or even like a leg extension or something like that, some single joint movements. But if you're thinking about to me, when I see it done with a squat, I see it mostly just lead to tentativeness. Mm-hmm. And then when you don't blast out of the hole, we know. So to me, we have these strength curves. And so some exercises lend themselves really well to this. So maybe like a bell-shaped strength curve would that's like a bicep curl, right? That could lend itself well to this. But when you have, like, say, linear ascending strength curves where your low point is in the hole, so that you can produce the least amount of force in the hole, I think you're going to get in trouble here because you're just going to get stuck. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you just push it as hard as you can out of the hole, you're probably going to get to the point where you have leverage, and you're now in a bench press, your triceps can take over. Or in a squat, all of a sudden you can get to your glute max and your quads out of your adductors. And so to me, I think if we think of it not necessarily as good or bad, but as more exercise specific, and there might be a time, like we've used this, is that if you change the strength curve of the squat, like you band it up, you add some accommodated resistance, I think then, because then it's not that hard out of the hole.
Yeah.
Then you can probably get a good mind muscle connection. It's going to be terrible. I mean, we've both done it. You're going to want to quit. But I think then you can feel more of your quads, feel more glutes, because at the end of a squat or a bench, you're essentially going to be decelerating the weight at the top of that.
Yeah, you can't blast through it as you would in like a throw or something. And I think at that point, you're probably talking more about performance and speed development anyway. But I think it still applies for strength and hypertrophy for sure. So, yeah, we know we're going to have to drop the weight a little bit if we're going to focus on internal cues. But I think if you look at that acutely, then you would say, well, that's bad. We're reducing mechanical tension, and that's a problem. But if we're using that for a specific reason, like I'm always looking ahead. Like I'm always thinking of the next phase of training. I'm always thinking of the next year or 2 years, whatever it is. And I think that can be beneficial. Like if you're someone whose back hurts every time that you squat, like there's probably something going on with technique, and we're going to have to take away some of that neural drive in performing the exercise and focus on something else. Maybe that is a specific muscle. Maybe it's a different external cue. Either way, it's probably going to pull away from your natural pattern and probably going to result in a reduction in weight. But there's powerlifters talk about this all the time. Like I had to change my technique, and every once in a while it'll result in more weight in the short term, but often we have to pull a bunch of weight off the bar. I have to start focusing on a different either internal or external cue. But in the end, the result is that they're able to either do the movement pain-free, or they lost some amount, they gained some amount of efficiency that they didn't have otherwise. Because I think there's this concept of like if you put a maximal amount of weight on the bar, you're going to move it with the most efficiency, right? That's kind of the concept. But that only applies to the whatever motor pattern you have currently. We can build new motor patterns. So you may have, as most people do when they first start bench pressing, it's some kind of like crazy elbows out, like torquing thing. Like I would argue that's probably not a very efficient motor pattern for the bench press, but for them in that moment, their brain knows how to use the least amount of energy. Mm-hmm. So for that moment, it is the most efficient thing. So when we're looking at
because they've never used that, they don't know how to fire that. They don't know how to fire that motor pattern anyways.
Yeah, if they're not, as a very simple example, if they're not used to arching in the bench press, and I teach them how to arch, they're just going to reduce the range of motion. They're going to move more weight. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they got stronger. That's good or bad. It's just as a cute example. So I think when we're looking at these studies that say, an internal cue is going to result in poor performance, I think we need to keep in mind that they're talking about the short term. So with that being said, I think that the ultimate goal is all external.
So you're saying even in like a biceps curl, or even in those single joint exercises, you want to see people just getting savage with it in a controlled fashion, like mm-hmm. controlled eccentric, controlled concentric. I would tend to agree, for sure. But I think when we get into one of my big things is kind of performance in these compound lifts at the price of a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. So say you want to get really good at like barbell overhead pressing, which is one of my least favorite exercises ever, and I think
you're actually good at it though.
I know, because I'm super patho.
I'm terrible at it.
And so like, which turns into like just massive extension,
standing incline press.
But like a standing barbell press, like what is the limiter there? The limiter is, what are you using? Like anterior delts, medial delts, and then if you can get it here, then you can if you can arch your back enough and get tricep leverage, somehow you can get it up. So if you're chasing performance in that lift, I just don't know. Yes, you need an external locus of control, but I don't know what you're doing. Same thing, like from a hypertrophy standpoint, there's so many better ways for me to train those individual. If I want to train the anterior delt, or I want to train the medial delt, or I want to train your triceps, there's so many better exercises that I can pick than that exercise, which is going to put your rib cage and your pelvis in a shitty position to load. And so if someone wants to get good at that, I think we teach them how to do that in the least deleterious way. But for like a standing overhead barbell press, if you want to get really good, you kind of have to be really shitty. Is that the only exercise that you see like that?
No, I think that would apply to a lot of exercises, and I think we could just kind of summarize this as like unless you need to be doing an exercise, you don't need to be doing an exercise. So
we have this fascination with the barbell. Like everybody somehow, like, why do they need to barbell squat? Why do they need to deadlift? Like a deadlift is, if we really think about it, it's a pretty shitty exercise. Like
it's good for deadlifts.
It's good for deadlifts, but like it's not going to really overload your hamstring. The limiter for most people is going to be erectors or grip. You can get rid of that with straps. Most people are going to be shitty off the floor. But if you really like deadlifting, fantastic.
Or if
but
you need to do it for your sport,
or if you like powerlifting, you're gonna have to deadlift, you're gonna have to squat, and you're gonna have to bench. But I think that if you want to get really really good at powerlifting, you're gonna have to probably not do those in an ideal fashion. Would you agree?
To a degree, I think that there's a large range of what's acceptable, ideal? Right? So I think that's going to look very different from person to person. I think if you get to the point where you're pulling 700 pounds off the floor and you don't have any pain, I think you're probably doing okay. Or you're a psychopath. Either way, like, I'm jealous of you. I think that like there is going to be certain times where, again, like changing that motor pattern will actually create more efficiency long term. So I think that there is some kind of technique building involved in this, but at some point, it's probably just going to be about moving the weight. Yeah, I mean, it's your sport. Like, I don't think anyone's looking at football players, which is also a sport, I believe.
Yeah, football is a sport
in America. Okay,
mm-hmm.
Where no one's looking at the way that they're running past someone or telling them that they should be doing it differently when they cut or whatever.
I mean, they coach that up.
They coach it, but in the moment, in that.
In the game.
In the game, it's not like the coach is going to pull you. Like, hey, you got past the guy, but I would have preferred that you would.
I might tell him to take a different angle.
Potentially, I've never watched a sport before, so I don't really know how that stuff works.
But in powerlifting, that would be a really bad thing to stay in a meet. Like, hey, I noticed that your hips are here, and that would be terrible to say to someone.
At that point, you've kind of built up what you have, and you're going to use that, and your brain's probably going to know the most efficient way to do it, and you would just hope that is not something that's going to result in injury.
So let's talk about the squat, because I think the squat it's getting. People love the squat. People love to squat, and then they love to squat deep. Like, if you somehow like short a squat, you're an asshole. Like, it's immediate blasphemy. Like, partial squats in our industry are all of a sudden the worst thing known to man. And I agree. Like, watching Myles Garrett, who is a defensive end for the Cleveland Browns, doing quarter squats, was pretty terrible to watch. But I think we really need to take a step back, and his squats just look terrible all around. But the guy's a freak. Like, he's and so yes, a lot of times maybe him squatting 675 for 7 inches is a bad thing. But you could make an argument from a power development standpoint that a partial range of motion squat, I mean, because if I'm going to tell you to vertical jump, hopefully you're not going to go all the way down into an ass to grass. You're going to go partial range and you're going to jump up.
Yeah. And the reason, from a stress standpoint too, like, guy can put that much weight on his back, he's probably going to be able to handle.
Yeah, he's probably going to be able to handle getting hit and dealing some hits. And so when we think about the squat is probably not the ideal exercise for a couple things. From a hypertrophy standpoint, if you're thinking this from the squat is a squat, so if you want to get good at squatting from a powerlifting standpoint, you're probably going to have to get a coach and figure out, you're going to have some compensatory patterns, right? Because if you want to get good at anything, there's going to be a sacrifice. And so, but if we're just talking about the general population and squatting, we probably want a more knee dominant squat, not a hip dominant squat. And I think most people have been taught, like we spent, even ourselves, like we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years trying to get out of this more hip dominant squat and kind of keeping a rib cage over a pelvis, which is pretty difficult. And so when we think about the squat, a lot of this research that we see on muscle activation and even hypertrophy is kind of in this prototypical hips back squat.
We would assume
where once you get to depth, your limiter is going to be adductor magnus, and then as you come up, you're going to decelerate, so you're never really overloading the quads. And then
very little knee translation forward, right?
So you're not going to get any hypertrophy erectus femoris. Maybe you're not going to get, like, a squat is really a bad exercise for the hamstrings because they're kind of antagonistic. It's not doing anything for the hamstrings. So if we're really thinking about the squat, like, what is it training? It's training adductors. But I think if we change it up, if we're kind of using this idea of positions first and then kind of movement, so position of an axial skeleton, right? And then movement of an appendicular skeleton, and then the load. Mm-hmm. And so what are you thinking, what are you looking for when you see a general population, when you're coaching up that squat for the first time?
I mean, it should just look like a straight line, essentially. With their head is stacked over their thorax is stacked over their pelvis, and their pelvis is over their feet. That would be the ideal squat. And I think most people can actually get there with external loading in the right position, which is generally more anteriorly loaded.
So like a forward goblet squat.
Thinking like a goblet squat, but not a goblet squat here, having the weight out in front, the elbows forward with the thorax translating backwards to a degree. That's something that most people can get into over time, and that's more... Especially
if they haven't been taught how to squat another way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'd much rather take someone from the beginning than have someone who has a 600-pound low bar back squat and teach them how to squat like that. Like, the chances are, like, I'm not going to be able to get them to ever change that pattern over completely, but at least I can give them a different option, have some variability within that squat pattern. Because I don't think that necessarily doing that type of squat is bad. That, like, I think that you could probably still, like, I think it's so individual from person to person and, like, what they're actually using. So I always take those.
Well, you're a really good deadlifter, so you tend to turn your squat into...
It's a fucking deadlift. But I can tell you what, like, my quads are sore the next day after I squat. I feel my quad, like, if you looked at it, you'd be like, that's a terrible squat by our standards. Mm-hmm. By most standards, they would say that I probably need to get my ass out more. But, like, it's just very indiviable.
And that's how you've gotten really, really strong in that pattern.
And just completely drilled that in. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing either. It's just, it would be a bad thing if I also was not able to present a decent looking squat, as we're talking about, with the knees translating forward, the heels still down on the ground, the thorax is more translated back compared to forward, the head not going forward. If you can't do that, because I think at this point we're talking about just generally being able to move well.
So you're talking about not being stuck in a pattern.
Yeah.
So what we see a lot of compensatory strategies in like maybe a CrossFitter or a powerlifter that only has this one extension based strategy, they're going to likely get in pain. But if you can show me variability, then if you can show me that you can do a knee dominant squat, maybe you're not going to be able to do as much weight, probably not if you've gotten really strong in that other squat. But if you can show me that variability, and if you're starting from square one, we're probably teaching that other squat. Would you agree?
For sure, yeah. And then at some point, like, if I think about taking someone through a beginner to powerlifter, for instance, where, like, ultimately, as a powerlifter, we want to be able to squat as much weight as possible. I want to take advantage of levers. I want to put the bar in a position that allows them to move most efficiently with the least amount of effort, which I guess would be the definition of efficiency. Nonetheless, I still at the same time want to be teaching them how to... I want to first begin with that type of ideal squat that we're speaking
and then see where it breaks down,
just,
see if they, from their joints, see if they get better.
Yeah, and like, best case snenario, that's the way they squat.
I mean, that's how Pat squats.
And some people... I mean...
That's how Johnner squats.
Yeah, like, if you've been working outside your whole life, or if you're wider than you are tall, like you'll probably do pretty well with that type of squat. Like you might be able to build on that.
You gotta really maybe have a really heavy head.
Yeah, or having a very heavy head, which I think I feel like Pat's head would be extremely heavy.
It looks heavy.
It looks really heavy. Yeah, it would definitely be the bowling ball I would pick if I was going to bowl. But so if you can build that pattern up, and then at some point when you start to progress through this training experience, like at some point they're going to put a bar on their back, and at that point I'm just gonna kind of see what happens, because if I've given them, if their first experience is like this knees forward kind of like ideal thorax stacked over pelvis type of squat, and they still want to dump forward, and I've taught them all these things, they know how to squat properly, but that still seems to be the most efficient pattern for them, and it doesn't produce any pain, then that's probably going to be the way that we're going to squat. We're probably going to do a low bar squat. There's probably going to be more forward lean. And
if they want to power lift.
If they want to power lift. And I could potentially make that argument for hypertrophy as well. That maybe it just feels better. I mean, that's kind of I'm going to run through this experiment myself to see, because my squats have gotten horrendous over the past year or so. And I'm going to run back through with front squats and see if I can get a little bit more upright again. But I always seem to come back to a more forward lean back squat. Mm-hmm. And I always feel fine there. It never hurts.
You probably feel fine until someone told you that was terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Then all of a sudden you're like, oh God, I'm getting hurt here.
Yeah, it was weird, because I went through, initially I think I learned, at some point I was just squatting, when I first started, no one was telling me anything. And then someone told me that I needed to spread my knees out more and get my ass back. And so I was doing that, and then started to bring it back. And I think, again, if you can just figure out where you're most efficient and not painful, I don't think it really is that big of a concern. But what I was gonna say regarding the hypertrophy is even when I am using what looks like more of a hip or back dominant type of squat, I still feel a lot in my quads. So I still think that there's something going on there. I don't think that we need to have this archetype of movement all of the time, but I think that we should be able to demonstrate that at some load or with some position, or just if I gave you external load in a different way, then you can demonstrate that. But maybe when I put the bar on your back, you're not able to. And if I have that, then I'm going to be fairly happy. And again, if it's producing pain, then we probably have to bring it back, and then we probably have a low hanging fruit there. If your back hurts when you squat and your nose is facing the ground, then I think we can have something we can
squat
fix
morning.
Yeah, which tends to be the way that I squat.
First time I saw you squat, I was like,
yeah, it's pretty wild.
And I mean, that was with 405 pounds on your back with the pause. And so,
which is a lot longer than I thought. 6 seconds.
6 second pause.
6 seconds is a lot longer when you actually count the seconds.
When you actually count,
and you don't just count to 6. I can count to 6 real fast.
So let's talk about this idea of, and so this kind of drives me crazy too, is this idea that from compound lifts are going to be the best for hypertrophy? Because I have this idea that you're going to run out of runway. Essentially, once you get your squat fairly solid, you're just going to systemically, the stressor isn't going to be local muscular tension, which is the driver that we know of for hypertrophy. Mm-hmm. And so same thing for bench press, same thing for deadlifting. Eventually, those just aren't going to be the exercises that are going to get you more hypertrophy, mm-hmm. in my opinion. And so say you have to take, for me, if I want to get my bench press better, I'm probably going to have to do some kind of triple undulating periodization model where I'm doing strength work, I'm doing power work, and then maybe I'm doing hypertrophy work. I'm probably going to have some really, really complicated strategy, and then I'm going to have to peak. And I don't think that is going to get me more muscle. Whereas if I spent more, if I just kind of maintained my bench press because I like bench pressing, and then I used a bunch of other angles like flies or things with different strength curves, better strength curves for the chest, then I think that I could get more hypertrophy. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have to first ask ourselves what is the goal of hypertrophy, right? It's local. We need to have local muscular strength. Now, then the question becomes, how can you get that any better with a compound lift? Mm-hmm. And I guess the argument would be that you can handle more load, and maybe it's safer. Like, I don't even know if that would be a good argument. That like there's not so much load on one specific joint, but even then you'd be decreasing.
I mean, talk to people who fucking throw a bunch of barbell bench in their program.
Yeah,
their elbows are generally going to go bonkers.
Yeah, so I mean, I when we consider like what's actually happening at a physiological level with hypertrophy and why someone actually grows, you realize that it has very little to do with the external stimulus, really. It's like, how can we...
Yeah, your muscles don't know whether it's a barbell, a dumbbell, a cable. Like, they don't know. They have no idea.
So, yeah, there's no real reason to be pigeonholed into one particular thing. If you really enjoy doing it, like, that's another thing. But it seems that...
Yeah, I think the community aspect of it, I think one of the reasons that both of us don't let go of deadlifting, squatting, and benching is because the community that we've grown up with, the community that we still, play this sport with, we all do that. And so we want to be good at that so we can show up and play the game. But I think if you're not attached to that, so if you have an entirely new generation that is not attached to that implement or that training stimulus, I don't know that it would be the best. Like, maybe a safety squat bar would probably be the best strategy to load up a squat, and then once you've run out of runway with that, or even continuously, like a leg press might have a better strength curve, like things, like there's plenty of other ways once you've gotten your quad sufficiently big from those compound lifts, once you've brought out. So that's the other thing I guess we run into is, like, with newbies, compound exercises are going to be way more efficient. Definitely. Because they don't have to spend time on these individual muscle groups. They can just,
they're just going to grow no matter what.
They're going to grow no matter what, so you might as well do the most efficient pattern. You might as well use compound lifts. But I think once you get more advanced, then once you're pushing, 20 plus sets, 15 plus sets, maybe 25 plus sets of volume, you're not going to be able to do that with those compound lifts.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's definitely going to be limited at some point.
And you don't even know how to count them. Like, what do you fucking count?
Totally. Yeah.
What do you kind of squat as? Is that a set for the quads and a set for the glutes? Like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And so then I just think you really keep your program kind of similar, and then take your sets up, see where your max adaptive volume is, and then do all the things that we do with advanced trainees. But this idea that a compound, and then maybe that's something that we need to talk about is, so there's performance in these compound lifts that's probably mostly ego and community driven, and then there is the positions, kind of this other world. So this, we talked about earlier today. We have the performance side of lifting, where it's like, just lift as much weight as you can, however you can do it. And then you have this other kind of more scared realm of, I think fear is the right word to use, and that's more physical therapy based, and that's like, don't do anything if you're in the wrong position. And so I think we're trying to move those things together.
Totally.
And so we've both taken a lot of courses that we probably have no business taking, right? A lot of PT courses. And then brought some of those things back to the strength and conditioning room. And so one of the big tenets that we always talk about is having a head stacked on a rib cage, stacked on a pelvis, and then making sure that you manage an axial skeleton before you move an appendicular skeleton. And so we're willing to concede some bullshit on a squat, a deadlift, maybe not a deadlift, and a bench. But I think that one thing that we both recognized in the last couple of years is that we can turn a lot of these accessory movements that people tend to butcher in the weight room. We can almost turn them into really, really strenuous and challenging rehab exercises.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think just that concept in itself, like, this stuff can get extremely complicated when you start looking at jaws and like teeth and ears and eyes and all this shit. Like, you can start going down a pretty crazy rabbit hole, which I don't have any business speaking of. But I think from just a very easy way to implement this is just, like, as you talked about, just like having a thorax dissector repel. It's like there's no reason to do lat pull downs where you're like you look like you're getting stabbed in the back. There's There's just
you might get hypertrophy there. Like
you absolutely will get hypertrophy
because you're extending, you're gonna have like that's the thing where we get in arguments with this. Like what is biomechanically advantageous for the individual muscle versus like this idea of functional anatomy. Like functional anatomy is how the whole body moves together, right? Mm-hmm. And so like yeah, you can do this hyperextended whatever. But there's going to be that's going to lead to you probably being locked in extension, and over time you're going to be a backdoor PT client or a front door PT client.
I mean, I guess you just have to ask yourself like where you want to pick your battles, right? Because I can pretty much guarantee that if you train that way all of the time, like you're eventually going to get stuck and you're eventually going to be in pain. That's just the way that these things work. When you lack variability in your movement, you just give yourself the same feedback all the time. Injury. That's how that is an overuse injury. Just understanding too from a stress standpoint, like we want to be able to build up our stress tolerance just in general. The more systemic stress that we have, the less likely we are to carry out our training program. Like we need very local specific stress, especially when we're talking about hypertrophy. The generalized stress response is extension. So if you're constantly driving extension, you're constantly driving that signal to your brain that this is not a good thing, that you're basically at your limit all of the time on a tricep extension. Like I think you're sending a poor signal, and I think that's eventually going to break you down in one way or another. And that's a whole different argument, but I think just from biomechanically, like if you just keep in mind that there's certain times when you're going to have to deviate. When you do a bench press with your feet on the ground and you're trying to move a lot of weight in a way that is not going to put a ton of stress on your shoulders, if you are a normal arm size lifter, like if you have to move through some appreciable range of motion, it probably makes sense to arch your back. If you're trying to leverage your chest in a bench press and to feel your pecs, even if you're doing it for hypertrophy, you're probably going to want to arch. So I'm going to take that in that position. Like I know I'm not highly actually loaded in that position. I'm laying down on my back. Gravity's not acting down upon me as it would in a squat. So I will take that. But in exchange, I need to get that back somewhere else. So if I'm doing a lying tricep extension, there is absolutely no reason why I can't find my hamstrings and my abs and reposition my pelvis as I go through that tricep extension. And you can speak to this, like we've changed these things up. Often when you do that, you actually feel the intended muscle more anyway. There's like less of an energy leak.
Like it's really interesting to me.
Then you don't have to spend all your time doing like these bullshit ab exercises or rehab exercises or fucking foam rolling all day, because you're just reinforcing a good pattern when you're in the gym.
And the Gen Pop loves feeling abs. Like they love feeling abs.
As a trainer, if you're not doing that already, like this is something that can help to get a lot of buy-in. And often, like if you have clients coming in, they're feeling those things. Like if you're just giving them for back pain, especially like if they start to feel hamstrings and abs, a different sensation that they're not used to feeling, regardless of what it's doing biomechanically, I would definitely make the argument that you are putting yourself in a better position to move well and without pain. But just the fact that you're giving them different sensory input that they're not used to getting, they will probably walk out of the gym feeling better, and they will probably want to walk back in and give you more money.
And we don't have time to talk really about like sagittal plane muscles versus frontal plane muscles versus transverse plane muscles, which no one will ever get to anyways. Would us for sure. We probably won't even get the frontal plane muscles. Maybe you'll get an adductor. Maybe we might get a glute med. We might be able to get a frontal plane.
Go to the hypertrophy camp for that.
December 13th and 20th. But I think and Pat has, multiple 2-day seminars on this. Zach Couples has, a 2-day seminar on this. Bill Hartman, you can go to his intensive. These are people who have they've taken these PRI principles and kind of brought them to the weight room, which has been a huge piece for me in kind of integrating this idea of really, really, really integrating anatomy with training. Not just like this bodybuilder anatomy of like this is what the biceps do, but really looking at the entire structure, looking at breathing, even looking at like when he's talking about teeth, he's talking about reference centers. He's talking like if you don't have a molar, that might be worse than like losing a limb. Like that's probably not true, but it's a Ronism. But and so like these are big things, and so if we can do what we can I see it as we're fucking people up less.
Yeah.
And we're gonna people that want to get bigger. There's going to be a price for that. You're going to lose movement options. Like as you get, maybe not all the time, maybe not for, but you're probably it's healthy for you to lose some movement options as you get bigger. Mm-hmm. If you still have those movement options like me. So let's go back to the overhead pressing. Like with how my rib cage is positioned and what my shoulders should be able to do, I should not be able to do I can keep a rib cage and go back here. Mm-hmm. So that means I've made some compensatory strategies in my shoulder from years of overhead squatting and Olympic lifting to make that be able to happen. That is not, I'm able to do it, but that is probably not a good thing. That is patho.
Yeah, I think that's what gets lost often. And I think guys like Zach Couples and Pat Davidson and Bill, like you mentioned, are kind of bringing this. I have no idea if they're bringing it to the masses because I don't pay attention to anything outside of my own world. But they're at least getting people to understand that, hey, just because you can move your limb in this position or you can do this particular thing doesn't mean that you should be able to, and doesn't mean that it's healthy. And just because you have all this mobility or that you're getting all of this mobility from this new intervention that you're using doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing and that it's not any...
Or that you're really getting mobility.
Yeah, are you even really getting it? Where is it coming from? Or I think that there's just basic foundational things that you need to understand about the way that your body's set up to be able to be successful with the rest of the sports that you're doing or training that you're doing.
I don't know that it. To me, the jump to sport is a tough jump. Mm-hmm. Like the jump to the weight room is an easier jump to me. Because the jump just, and even not in the weight room, I don't think that using these principles is necessarily going to make people stronger. I don't think that. I think that it's going to potentially make them have a longer shelf life in the sport that they love. I think that you can get really, really strong, really, really powerful doing stupid shit. I mean, that's proven. Watch the NFL Combine, watch some of those dudes.
And in most cases, they're doing things the way that they should because they don't have another option. So I would just we have
power is extension based.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I wouldn't want anyone to, without any guidance, to start doing the things that we're talking about. Just because I said your knee should go forward when you squat does not mean that your knee should go forward when they squat. You need to actually learn how to manage the rest of your axial skeleton before you even attempt any of that stuff, or else you're going to get into trouble. So if you're someone who squats with an arched back and their butt goes back first, and that's the way you've squatted for a long time, I would
try
not
to go in the weight
recommend
room
doing
use
that.
Use that same weight with a knees forward squat.
Yeah, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. And I think that a lot of times that when you hear of people that squat like that or do those exercises like that and they don't have any pain or they've never had any issues, I think for them it's probably the best strategy. I still think at some point that strategy will wear out, or maybe it won't. It depends on what they're trying to do. It depends on what their psychology is like and how far they're trying to take this thing.
It might not wear out if you do things in a really, really smart way. And deload.
You have to make a sacrifice somewhere.
Which I think is when I see these programs that are super. That's what I wonder is if we can make our programs more efficient. Do we really need to deload every 4 weeks? If I'm able to keep you in a good position, I'm able to do. I don't think you need to. I think you can. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I see with a lot of these programs is they're constantly deloading every 3 or 4 weeks, and I don't ever feel joint wise or muscularly. I don't ever feel like I need that.
Neither do I. That's a really interesting point. So, what would be? We're going in a totally different direction than we started, but this is cool. So, what would you look at for determining whether or not you actually need a deload? What should you be feeling at that point? What should you be seeing at that point? Because a lot of times what I hear with people when they say that it's time to do a deload, they're talking my knees hurt. Well, a lot of them are saying joint, my knees hurt, my back hurts. If I take this block of training, this mesocycle, whatever, another week, my elbows start to hurt. So it gets me wondering, if we cleaned up things biomechanically, maybe we would be able to extend that shelf life, which I would agree with 100%, just in the sense that we're just giving some variability to the system. But where would we want to stop? Would it be psychological with that? Because in my mind, I'm thinking if it central should be driving this.
Well, from what we do in like a bodybuilding world and like a hypertrophy world, even like powerlifting world, like I don't think central fatigue is really the thing. I think of most everything is like peripheral fatigue. Mm-hmm. So to me, where I would do a global deload is if someone like us doesn't want to train.
Yeah.
Like if we psychologically don't want it, like if we're not, and then I would make the argument that you might be able to stay away from deloads entirely if you like kind of what we've been doing is if you kind of deload different muscle groups inside of different blocks. So you have a specificity block where you're like right now we're working on lats and hamstrings, and so our lat volume's up to like 25 20 28 sets per week, and then our hamstring volume is the same thing, but our quad volume's at like 10. Like we don't do a lot of isolated quad volume, and then our chest volume and our tricep volume and ours down. Biceps are high because we have a lot of pulling invariably, but I think that we can maybe, I think the amount of people that need like global deloads, if you really have your shit in order and you are like a weightlifting robot, like I think we are. If you're not a training robot, then I think you're going to need deloads more often, just because you're going to under recover, you're going to undersleep, you're going to under eat. But I think if you have those boxes checked, to me, you can, if you're just after hypertrophy and even maybe strength too, I think you can treat things as more movement specific, and then use your different blocks so that maybe you never even have to take a deload. And if you do see performance driving down, and say if you're on a chest block and you see like you haven't progressed on your bench in the last 2 weeks, it might be time to back that off. Like if you're not getting micro loading and you're not getting better. But to me, if we have a reasonable setup for a program and we chase hypertrophy in these specific regions and then use that time to back off on other regions and then come back at them, I don't think like where I see people getting in trouble is you do try to do everything all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's what's worked at least for me in the last year or so. And I think you've done a lot. You add more like work capacity blocks, which I think is another way to do this, in that it's a more systemic fatigue based model and less local muscular tension and less joint stress because you're using less weight, and also kind of the aerobic system, the temp, like your ability to regulate temperature become the limiters and not local muscular tissue. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of throwing in the towel from a hypertrophy standpoint for those 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that is essentially a deload mm-hmm. for your musculoskeletal system. Mm-hmm. But you're getting some other adaptations at that time. You're probably one of the big things. You come back. I think what we've seen is people come out of these work capacity blocks and their perceived exertion is so low for regular stuff.
Yep.
Like you just come back to like doing straight sets, you're like, fuck,
this
is easy.
And I think just again that comes back to just like that systemic fatigue thing that could be potentially a limiter, and that like it's just training. I would
say that to me is like just perceived exertion.
Yeah, and so I guess the terminology is probably off. It's just that if you're getting a lot of anxiety, like because when you're doing these types of work capacity blocks, there is a lot of anxiety going into those workouts. Like there is, because
you're
just
almost
like,
competing.
Your perceived stress is very high, whether it be real or not. Like, and then when you drop that, why did you take this off?
Dude, my neck is getting so hot.
That's why I need a small. Oh, mine fell off too.
You don't even have
one. What happened to mine? You can put mine on. I think once you drop off those big workouts is like those workouts that keep you up at night when you're thinking about doing the next day.
I would definitely.
I think that it becomes just a huge load off, and that allows you to adapt to the following training load or the training block. This concept of super compensation or phase potentiation is more of a concept at this point. Like it hasn't really been proven to be a real thing, but it seems, just at least from a psychological standpoint, I think there's a lot of validity to it.
What do you mean by that? Like, keep going.
In terms of just being able to go from one phase, take adaptations, or so that phase potentiation would just be taking an adaptation from one training block and carrying it over to the next block to build upon it. So like the simplest example would be like if you did more of an aerobic training block, does aerobic adaptations allow you to handle more volume for the subsequent phases? That may or may not be happening.
If your limiter is metabolites or aerobic system, which you could argue that if you're just after hypertrophy, those are probably not your limiting things.
But even so, so my argument would be that even if that isn't a limiter, every once in a while, I think you need to pull away from just like hammering that nail. Because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, 3 to 4 weeks of a work capacity block, and keep in mind, like we're not eliminating like exercises. Like you're not eliminating mechanical tension. You're still getting enough. Like the amount of volume and mechanical tension that you need to maintain muscle mass is so small that 3 to 4 weeks of that, I'm not really too concerned about it.
You could probably maintain with what, like 6 to 8 sets, I think. 10 sets
it's
a week.
Like crazy,
it's
crazy low. Yeah. So you're not going to lose anything, but I think what you do gain, even if you don't agree with the phase potentiation concept, which I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think you're definitely gaining a psychological component to it, that you're reducing anxiety for, like, that you have this different level now, and that these workouts are going to be fairly easy when you go back to hypertrophy training, and you're psyched to do it. Like, you're excited to go back into training, and I've taken a lot of people through these type of training blocks, and it almost inevitably leads to them doing a little bit more than they were previously, and that's really all that I care about. You could make the argument, of course, that they would have gotten there anyway, but I don't think you can ever underestimate the potential of psychology in all this. People need novelty. Like, I mean, that's as much as like we like to believe that the ideal thing is just hammering in on the same the same quality forever. It just doesn't. I don't know that it really works that way. And I think some people like just need more novelty than others. But even those who don't, they probably can still benefit from some.
I know I dread them, but I really do enjoy them, and they generally, like, even us doing the 30-60, like, it was fun talking to Evan, and I know we're gonna have Evan on. I think there's some people that are just gonna get big no matter what the fuck they do, and those are the people that just get jacked doing like 95-pound thrusters. Like, how, like, that just like defies like what we know. Like, there's not like these CrossFitters who are, have FMIs of 27, 28. Like, yeah, maybe they used to be football players or whatever, but they still got jacked doing a lot of other stuff, like just a ton of metabolic work. And so I think that there are these anomalies that we can't necessarily account for, and then we can get, I don't want to be evidence limited, I guess, is my big thing. And so, yeah, like, muscular tension is probably the key, but we don't even really know what, like, we probably shouldn't even be saying hypertrophy at this point. We should just be saying muscles get bigger.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know what's happening at the cellular level of what's going on, from how muscles get bigger. Is it sarcoplasmic? Is it just mitochondrial mass? So there's so much stuff that we don't necessarily know. So the things that we do know are that you being able to move more weight in more exercises. This is like the simple side of complexity. So the simple side of simple is dangerous, and then if you can kind of get to the simple side of complexity, maybe you're not as dangerous. So if you can move more weight for more reps for more exercises, you're probably going to get bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you can,
and in a better position.
Yeah. So whatever that means to get there, really, and that could mean a lot of different things for different people. It was really cool talking to Evan, because he got me thinking about just a lot of different things outside of the box of what we would normally consider to be hypertrophy training.
Yeah, and he's got some legit big dudes, like, who don't do anything that we do.
Yeah, and like, so it makes you think two things, like, maybe it's all just genetic and it doesn't really matter what the fuck we do. Like, we're all just gonna get to our cap one way or another. Like, and I can see that argument, honestly. But I like to think of things as being a little bit more exciting than that, and I think that they are, and that there's probably just a lot of things that we don't know yet, because you always see these outliers, and they are outliers, but there's still something going on there that we don't really understand yet, and that's kind of exciting. So there might be this whole other realm of possibilities that we haven't really figured out yet. So it's kind of cool to have crossover from completely different sides. I mean, like, hypertrophy would be one of the last goals for a CrossFitter. I mean,
it's actually been it's probably often deleterious.
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of cool to see just their point of view, and that makes you kind of think about what we could be doing differently or potentially better. So it's always fun to talk to those kind of people.
Yeah, man. I think the big things that we wanted people to get out of this were compound lifts. You might run out of runway, and if you get advanced, you probably will run out of runway. And those you're probably gonna want to take the volume that you have on your compound lifts down. If you don't care about powerlifting, if you've kind of like me, I've kind of given up on this idea of like squatting more weight, like for a 1 rep max. Like I just don't really give a fuck. Like, I don't care. And so if you've gotten to that point, then it becomes how do you maintain your squat performance, and how do you, if you are really after. To me, I'm 33, gonna have a kid. In the back of my mind, if I ever can't lift, I know I'm an asshole. Like, and I mean that in like I'm grumpy. Like if I can't train, I'm grumpy. Training is my anchoring habit. So I don't want to ever not be able to train. And some people are like, oh, if you can't take a week off the gym, you have a problem. Well, I don't ever take a week off of meditation. I don't need to take time away from things that hold my world together. Like I have no desire. Like I don't need to test that philosophy. I think if you took me away from the gym, I'd be fine. And figures probably not. I love to train. I do a lot of steps. I love to train, and so I think if we're really after longevity in not longevity in the sense of living forever, but longevity in the sense of doing this for as long as possible, I think that you really want to take a good look at what are my positions. Am I stuck in some kind of pattern? And is that pattern probably going to lead to pain and my inability to lift? And so that's why I think a lot of using these more physical therapy-based strategies for your accessory work or even your compound movement work, can be really, really helpful. And then getting to, I think Bill and Pat probably the best, has really taken what would be, I think, a fragility-based model and turned it into a more anti-fragility based model, and brought those same strategies to the weight room and then loaded them up.
Yeah, I think you need to learn that stuff at some point, ideally in the beginning. And if you do, then it can just lead you to this path of unconscious competence where you can just rip things and you're still getting exactly what you want out of those exercises. So I don't think that the two are mutually exclusive. I don't think that internal cueing is the only way you do it, or external cueing is the only way you do it. I think it's just like it's a spectrum. It's exercise based, it's experience based, it's goal based, and I think that ultimately they can all come together as one at some point. I think the goal would be to be able to have as much of an external driver in as many exercises as you can, while still doing things as you would back when you were
while
just
still being able to find
cueing.
and feel stuff if you need to at
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the goal.
It's a solid wrap up.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys. It's been fun. 53 minutes deep. If you're still here, Ryan and I will continue jamming on these. I don't know what these are complex topics, but interesting topics to us. So Pura Vida.
Yeah, let us know if you guys would prefer shirts off. Next time we had a little bit of a discussion about it in the beginning, but we could definitely go shirts off. We already had no pants on, so but let us know. But thank you guys for listening. Let us know if there's anything else you want us to cover.
Otherwise, we're done.
That's it.
This is it. Last one. Pura vida nos vemos.